Senator Bernie Sanders, and now Democratic presidential candidate in 2020, joins us right now on the Young Turks. Senator Sanders, welcome back.
Great to be with you, Cenk and Ana.
All right, great to have you. So we weren't planning on asking this, but the news broke today. So the New York Times saying that Donald Trump apparently told acting Attorney General Matthew Whitaker to put in a loyalist for an investigation of himself at the Southern District of New York. He also told, or his lawyers communicated with Manafort and Flynn's lawyers to talk about a pardon. These seem to be clear obstruction of justice. Are these impeachable offenses?
Well, if in fact they are true, I think they are impeachable offenses. And this adds to a long list of actions on the part of this president, who is perhaps the most unethical president we have had in the modern history of this country, which are impeachable. But I think we got to take a deep breath, allow the investigations to run their course, and then go forward. You know, if Trump is impeached, I'm going to be part of the folks who are going to be judging him. So my job is to hear the evidence and then vote. But this is another very serious charge, no question about it.
Okay, well, you're now officially in the race, so I want to talk about that, obviously. I know that you had said that one of the things you were considering on whether to enter the race was whether anyone else in the race was progressive enough to carry that mantle and to carry forward the ideas that honestly you had started in a lot of ways. So apparently you reached the conclusion that they are not.
Well, the conclusion that I've reached is that I think I am the strongest candidate to defeat Donald Trump. I think we can win states that Clinton lost. I think we could win states like Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Florida, and maybe some other states as well. And I think the message that we are bringing forth is not just that we need to transform our economic and political system so that it starts reflecting the needs of working families and not just the 1%. But I think what we are trying to do in this campaign is to put together the strongest grassroots effort that anybody in American history has ever done. We hope, Cenk, that within a week or two, we will be able to announce that we have 1 million people in every state in this country prepared to roll up their sleeves, help us win the Democratic nomination, help us win the general election, and equally important, help us take on the powerful special interest from Wall Street, the drug companies, the insurance companies, the military industrial complex, etc., to take them on so that we can finally create a government that works for all of us and not just the 1%.
Senator Sanders, you mentioned that you would be the strongest candidate to take on Donald Trump, and the polling certainly bears that out. But one thing that I've noticed is that every Democratic candidate, with maybe the exception of Senator Klobuchar, has taken on your rhetoric in their campaigns. And so they're all presenting themselves as extremely progressive, very much in favor of the policies that you proposed during the 2016 election. How do you differentiate yourself as the real progressive in the race?
Well, in two ways, Anna. And first of all, I think it is fair for people to ask who was there when these ideas were not popular. You know, when I talked about Medicare for all, as you will recall, virtually nobody was talking about Medicare for all. It was too radical, too extreme. I was talking about raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour when people in Congress were talking about $10 or $12 maybe an hour. I was there. I was talking about climate change being not only a major global crisis, but a national security crisis. Very few people were there. So I think when people look back and say, well, you know what? Bernie was there talking about these issues when they didn't have majority support in polls. Maybe that's worth something. And second of all, what I understand, and let me underline this point, is I know many of the candidates are running. And those in the Senate are friends of mine, and they are good people. And you're not going to hear me disparage them. But at the end of the day, this is what I do believe in my heart of hearts. That if you want Medicare for all, you're going to have to rally the American people to take on the incredibly powerful insurance industry and pharmaceutical industry who will spend hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars in lobbying, in dishonest advertising, in campaign contributions. If you want to combat climate change and transform our energy system away from fossil fuel into energy efficiency and sustainable energy, you're gonna have to take on the power of the fossil fuel industry. If you wanna raise taxes, as we must, on the wealthy and large corporations, you're gonna have to take on the billionaire class. The only way, in my view, my political judgment, the only way that is done is not inside the Beltway. The only way that is done is when you mobilize millions of people to stand up and fight back. That's the only way change has ever come about in terms of the civil rights movement, in terms of the women's movement, the labor movement, the gay movement. And that is kind of what we are attempting to do in this campaign. So it's not just winning the nomination, it's laying the groundwork for a movement that is prepared to take on the powerful special interests who control our economic and political life.
So Senator Sanders, let me follow up on that, because I'll tell you what some progressives are concerned about in regards to some of the other candidates, Kamala Harris, Cory Booker, Gillibrand, and I'll tell them the same thing if they come on the program, which is that they're worried that they're saying that they're for Medicare for all and Green New Deal, but that they're not really going to fight for it when they get into office. Are you also concerned about that?
Look, I'm not here to disparage any of those people. I know them all and I like them all. I think people are going to have to kind of check the record. So, when I talk about Medicare for all, it's not just that I fought for that as a presidential candidate in 2016. Cenk, I was fighting for that for 20 years. I live 50 miles away from Canada. That's where I'm talking to you right now. And in Canada, they spend half as much per capita as we do, and yet they provide quality care to all of their people without any out-of-pocket expenses. So this is an issue I know something. When you talk about taking on the drug companies, check out my record 10 or 15 years ago. I was taking on the pharmaceutical industry. I got arrested back when I was a kid fighting for civil rights. So for me, these are not new ideas. I've been doing it for my entire adult life, and I would hope people will check my record on that.
Senator Sanders, one last quick question about the other candidates. Do you now or have you ever cared about Elizabeth Warren's ancestry?
No, Elizabeth Warren, when you talk about other candidates, Elizabeth Warren is somebody I have known for over 20 years. She is a friend of mine, and she is a very, very good senator and a very serious person.
Senator Sanders, one thing that I've always admired about you is how you take on your opponents, either within your own party or in the Republican Party, with grace. You don't usually respond aggressively to provocations, but as the 2020 election heats up, how do you plan on handling Donald Trump's provocations? Because he's currently working on nicknames that he's going to tie to Democratic candidates.
Well, Anna, Trump is the exception to the rule. Usually, I like, as you well know, I bore people to death because I like talking about issues, and I'm not in the business of attacking people.
You don't bore us.
Trump, though, I think maybe is the exception to the rule here, in that I think in Trump, you have an extraordinarily dangerous president. This is a person who is a pathological liar. He is a fraud. He told working people all over this country, I'm gonna stand with the working class of America. And then he tried to throw 32 million workers off the health insurance they had. He did give massive tax breaks to the rich. He brought forth a budget which called for incredibly large cuts to Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. So he is a liar, he is a fraud, and we will do our best to expose him for what he is.
Okay, and now I want to turn back to policy. Mitch McConnell has threatened to put up the Green New Deal for a vote in the Senate. How do you feel about that threat?
Right, good. I'm a sponsor of the Green New Deal. And if Mr. McConnell wants to tell the world that he and his friend, Donald Trump, think that climate change is a hoax or that it's not man-made, go for it, Mitch. You tell the scientific community that you don't think climate change is man-made. Tell the scientific community and the people of this country that we do not have a major existential crisis in terms of the future of this planet. So number one, we have science on our side. Number two, we now have the capability, the technology to transform our energy system away from fossil fuel to energy efficiency and sustainable energy. And three, what the Green New Deal is also about is making it clear, and this I believe, that we can create millions of good paying jobs in terms of transforming our energy system. And by the way, when we do that, we're gonna pay a special attention to the needs of those communities that have suffered as a result of this transformation. Those workers who are working in the fossil fuel industry, they are not our enemies. And we have got to do everything we can to protect them, to make sure that the jobs that become available are jobs that they can get.
So if you are president, you've got a lot of priorities ahead of you that you, as you just explained, have been fighting for decades. Medicare for all, Green New Deal, and the list goes on. So how do you prioritize? How would you prioritize?
It's not a question of prioritizing. How do you compare the future of the planet when scientists tell us that we have 12 years if we don't turn around climate change that will cause irreparable harm? How do you not understand that people are dying? Thousands of people die every single year in this country because they don't have any health insurance, so they can't afford their prescription drugs. To my mind, it's not just this issue, it's that issue. We have got to develop an agenda that speaks to the needs of working families. That's healthcare, that's prescription drugs, that's education, that's childcare, that's infrastructure, that is climate change. We can do that when we think big and not small, and when we rally millions of people around that progressive agenda.
Senator Sanders, I hear your policy proposals and it's all very exciting. It's certainly what true progressives want to push for. But what concerns me is some of what we saw during the 2016 election. And I'm curious, were there specific lessons that you learned during that election that you're going to really look out for moving forward? And what are those lessons?
Yes, we have been criticized, correctly so, for running a campaign that was too white and too male oriented, and that is gonna change. We're gonna have a very, very diverse campaign staff, and we're gonna do a better job reaching out to every community in this country.
And in response to some of the attacks that we've seen in the mainstream press in regard to your campaign, what have you done to kind of fix those problems moving forward?
Anna, in my 2018 re-election campaign here in Vermont, we instituted, I think, the strongest protocol, maybe of any campaign, against sexual harassment. And we are gonna carry that into this presidential election. And that means that every employee on this campaign is gonna receive training and understanding what sexual harassment is about. If anybody believes they have been harassed, there will be an independent number outside of the campaign that they can call. And we have hired people who are some of the best in the country who will operate independently to help us on this issue.
Senator Sanders, let me challenge you on a policy issue that came up in 2016. So we understand that you've often talked about the millionaires and the billionaires that are corrupting the system, but very early on, you did not have money in politics that high in your priority list. In fact, I would make the argument, and I have, that when Larry Lessig entered the race, that you moved it up a little bit further on the list. Has that moved up your list overall in terms of priorities, and what do you plan to do about it?
Cenk, I don't have the papers in front of me, but I don't know that that's accurate. I have always understood that Citizens United is an effort to undermine American democracy, that it has got to be overturned, that voter suppression is disgraceful beyond belief, that the kind of gerrymandering we have right now creates an overall corrupt political system, all of which benefits the wealthy and the powerful. So this is an issue that I have felt extremely strongly about, and I don't understand how any serious candidate cannot feel strongly about it. Democracy, to my mind, means one person, one vote, not the Koch brothers spending $400 million in a 2018 election. So this is an issue. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, so you would take the Koch brother money out, but you would also take the George Soros money out?
Of course, I mean, the goal has got to be, right now, the overwhelming majority of billionaire money goes to Republicans. But you can't pick and choose. I believe, as it happens, not only in overturning Citizens United, but moving to public funding of elections. And we're seeing states like Maine move in that direction. New York City has done some good things. Look, here is the goal, not a complicated goal. I want anybody in this country, regardless of their income status, to be able to run for school board, to be able to run for Congress, to be able to run for President of the United States. And I do not want that person to have to simply be a billionaire or to be dependent upon big money to do that. And I'm very proud, by the way, that at the end of the day, I think we set a lot of records by rejecting super PACs and raising funds by the millions from small individual donations.
All right, last question for you, Senator Sanders. What are the attributes you would look for in a vice president?
I think we would look for somebody who is maybe not of the same gender that I am, and maybe somebody who might be a couple of years younger than me, and somebody who can take the progressive banner as vice president and carry it all over this country to help us with our agenda and help us to rally the American people.
All right, Senator Bernie Sanders running for president again. Thank you so much for joining us on the Young Turks. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Cenk.
The TYT Plus app is now available on iOS and Android. Download to get more TYT content at tyt.com/app.